Now let's do the intro.
All right. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Triple Play. Please remember to
like and subscribe and share, comment, all the things.
All the things. Yeah. Kind of gets long, doesn't it?
Yeah.
All right. Well, that being said, don't forget to support those that support us. We got Andy McCallum and those guys at Resource One at 636-458-1798, and also Chris and CS Design, who's been designing all the web stuff, and our new shop that'll be keeps kind of coming in and out. I guess YouTube's having some issues, but the shop will be on YouTube shortly. Give those guys a call at 573-436-3717. And I think that's it, man.
As always, who do we have today?
Well, today we got somebody who I've been friends with for a while and have known, I guess, 15, 20 years now. It's been a while. Yeah. And we were just talking about her husband and everything Greg touches turns to gold. I wish I was as good of an entrepreneur as him, but they have a great story. Becky, they have a foundation they started, but the story behind their lives and how this all started is where I wanted to have her in so we could discuss it a little bit, because I think people have heard different bits and pieces, and there's been some clips out in the media, maybe tied to the restaurant, maybe tied to different things, but I lived through it the whole time, so I know a lot of background, and I think there's a lot of interesting things. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Becky, where you grew up, the St. Louis question, where you went to school, and then, kind of lead us into, where you're at.
Yeah.
So.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, nice thanks for coming.
Yeah. So I didn't grow up in St. Louis, so I can't answer all those St. Louis questions. I was raised in New Orleans and went to St. Louis University, which is where I met Greg. And then, of course, anyone raised here doesn't leave, or they leave and they come back, I think. So we did live outside of St. Louis for a while, but we're back now.
Does New Orleans have a thing that you ask when you're down there? Like, what parish are you from? Or something like that?
Good question. I do think people in New Orleans ask about schools. I think, just like St. Louis, it's a way to figure out kind of where do you live and who are your circle of friends. And St. Louis or New Orleans has a lot of, in the high schools, they have a lot of religious single-sex schools. So that was also like a way to kind of figure out, just where people are from. But yeah, I went to Dominican in New Orleans.
There you go.
Yeah.
Dominican high school.
Dominican, yeah.
That's cool, though. I like it. It's very Hispanic smelling.
That is true. I played with a couple buddies that were from Louisiana, and they all went to single
Catholic.
Catholic boys' school. Like
Yeah.
all of them.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I guess makes sense though.
That does make sense.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
So you went to SLU.
Went to SLU, met Greg Ortyl, my now husband. We just celebrated 20 years of marriage.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Was it quick, long courtship, like years? Like,
well, our story is pretty great. We met in SLU. Let's see. It was my sophomore year. It was 93. No.
Ooh.
Yeah, 94, 93, 94, something like that. Greg was a junior. We were taking a night class. There was only a handful of undergrad kids in that class, so we kind of stuck together. So we were just friends, and then the fall semester ended, winter break, I came back, and he started chatting me up, leaving messages on my answering machine in my dorm, that kind of thing. And so we dated for a really brief time. I had already decided I was leaving SLU and I was going to the Savannah College of Art and Design in Savannah, Georgia. So when we started kind of talking, I was like, you're really cute, but I'm leaving. So this is going nowhere. And so we weren't quite set up with email back then. Anyway, we tried to kind of date long distance, but we were writing letters and we couldn't really afford long distance. We couldn't afford plane tickets. So the whole thing kind of fizzled. And so for about 5 years, we didn't talk. And then he did kind of find me through email years later. He was in grad school at the time. I had finished my undergrad. Anyway, we ended up, I took a job in Charlotte North Carolina. He was in Atlanta. He came to visit one weekend, and it was kind of like we picked up where we left off. And within a couple months, he had moved to Charlotte. And anyway, so
He was chasing you at this point.
well,
He's putting in work. I mean, you just
good.
put him as a hard
He's a worker.
Sounds like he's working hard.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. He was very focused and charming and sweet, and he's got this big heart, and so it was easy to kind of fall for him again. So it was years, our courtship, really, but
I'd forgotten you'd gone down to Georgia. Yeah. I remember because that's one of my favorite places to go is outside of Savannah to Tybee Island.
oh yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the best beaches ever, in my opinion. I love it.
It's pretty great. As a SCAD student, when I was there were no Friday classes. The school week was Monday to Thursday. And so on Fridays, people would pack up and hit Tybee Island. I mean, it was like the destination.
Oh, it's...
Yeah. Just
Have
a
you ever
quick.
been?
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
It's really pretty.
Does it look like Jurassic Park? Like the moth?
No, it's just an island. You know, Savannah's cool because it's got all this old architecture. It's the only town in the South that didn't get burned down after the Civil War. It was so pretty that the general who was burning them all down stopped right before.
Savannah.
Yep, and left it.
Good job, Savannah.
Yeah.
Well, he just thought it was a pretty area and decided not to burn it down. He'd burned every major
Maybe he's just tired.
town all the way down
I don't have it in me to burn this
when
one.
the South lost. Yeah, so Savannah's it's got a lot of old
Yeah.
history there. And I love just driving around it, just checking it out. I took a couple of days when the kids were taking naps and just drove around to look at all the old features and structures of houses, you know, where you could tell they were rehabbing the inside, but the outside still have that old character.
Savannah, Georgia. That's how I picture people talking down there in Savannah.
Well, you
True?
Yeah, you nailed it. Yeah, that's it.
That's all I know about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you go to Tybee Island. The island's just right outside Savannah, just a little ways.
It's an actual island.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of movies have been
look it
filmed there. A lot of movies have been filmed there. So,
Does one have, oh man, what's that girl?
One was Bagger Vance. Bagger Vance.
Bagger Vance was,
Bagger Vance.
that was filmed there.
Great movie.
The latest one with the beach. What was the TV show with gosh, the movie was terrible. It had The Rock in it, and gosh, I'm trying to think of the name of the movie.
There's a movie on an island with The Rock.
Yeah, but it's not supposed to be there. It's supposed to be like in California. It's filmed there though. They filmed it there. I'm trying to think of the name of the. If I said it, you know it because it was a popular like '90s TV show with they would save lives on the beach. Everybody, all you know.
Are you talking about Baywatch?
Yeah,
What?
That's where they filmed Baywatch?
the movie. Yeah, the movie.
movie?
The movie Baywatch.
The
was
newest
filmed there.
movie?
Yeah, that was filmed there.
Interesting.
A couple parts of Magic Mike were filmed down there. So
Oh, I did know that. I didn't know that.
the only reason why I know is because there's an ice creamery in there, and as the movie stars come by, they always get pictures, and you can see their, you know, and they'll put little thing about, you know, this was when they were doing this. So Adam Sandler has done a lot of his movies.
Well,
down
Georgia does
So-
huge tax breaks for
movies.
movie sets.
Oh.
Tax write-offs. So that's why a lot of films are in Georgia.
Well, that was also attractive because of Tyler Perry's studios there. He moved the studio here. He built that big studio there. He was trying to make his own like Hollywood studio there, and so that's where like Bad Boys 2 and Coming to America 2 were both filmed at the same time at that studio. So it's outside of Georgia there.
Very cool.
I mean Atlanta.
Yeah.
Kind of.
I'll have to check out that island.
There you go, Tybee. Great family island. I'm giving away the secret now. Now it's going to get busy.
It's like Seaside. Used to be a nice, not everybody goes to Seaside in St. Louis.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So you guys met. We got off on a little tangent, enjoying Savannah, Georgia, and Tybee Island. Good memories. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how you guys, because you guys have I would imagine, a great working relationship now. You guys kind of have your own little things. How did that evolve? Was that painstaking? Was it natural in the beginning? Was it necessary? Did you guys, how do you guys work together now?
Yeah.
Like, how did that come to be?
I think Greg has always been kind of an ideas guy. And I remember one of the first dates we went on, he was like, one day I want to own my own bar. And I was like, that's a terrible dream. I had worked in restaurants and I was like, oh man, no thanks. But when we were, we had been married for like 7 or 8 years and I was pregnant. We were living in St. Louis and he got this job opportunity that was going to take us to Denver. And it was like too good to pass up. And the housing market was crashing and we were selling our house and he was commuting for a couple months trying to figure out, like, do we really want to go there? Am I going to like this? Is it what I'm dreaming of? Anyway, we sell our house and we're moving out to Colorado. We decided we're going to drive our cars and we're in the middle of Kansas, which is, if you've done that drive, there's just nothing for hours. Mm-hmm. And he was like, he calls me and says, I'm taking this exit, pull up behind me. And we had just stopped. And so we pull over and I'm like, what, is everything okay? And he's like, I just got off the phone with my boss. The company did a reorg and I've been moved around. So this dream job has now like vanished. And we've got, our cars packed down and there's a moving truck a day behind us. And, so he's stuck with the job, but the whole time he's like brainstorming, I got to get out of here. And I think I can start my own company. I've got this idea, this niche in the market, and I'm going to go for it. And meanwhile, I'm just getting like more and more pregnant and we're renting this house. We've got no family there. Our savings account is just getting smaller and smaller. And, he's like, he sits me down and is like, I just need you to trust me on this one. And I'm, wiping tears away and I'm like, okay, I'll do this. And anyway, so he starts this telecom company and, it was like something you would see in a movie where, we invested our own money from selling our house and we've got so much money left in the bank. And he, with 2 other business partners, starts this company and we're running out of the company is running out of money really fast. And he's like, I'm going to investors, looking for investors. And finally it comes down to like the end of the bank account and we've got 1 month's rent left. And I'm like, remember talking to my mom on the phone and was like, I think I'm moving in with you where I don't know what's happening. And anyway, Greg and his partners went to New York City and went and met with all of these investors and walked away with millions of dollars invested in this little tiny startup company. And so I think from the beginning, I have always, because we've had this great personal relationship and years, kind of creating this great foundation, I trust him. And I trusted him in the beginning. It worked out like we just barely kind of made it happen. And then that company took off. And really quickly, as soon as things were looking good for that company, we moved back to St. Louis. I had our daughter, our first child, moved back to St. Louis. And that company has been bought and sold a couple times. Greg stuck around. And then something similar with the restaurants. He kind of had this idea, like, I really want to do this. And I was like, this is terrible. I don't like this. There's nothing about this that makes sense to me. And I'm jumping forward, but we had befriended Jen and Mark Hinkle, because of our second child, Oaks, who had a heart defect. The Hinkles also had a son with a heart defect. Mark was at the time managing Annie Gunn's. And
which, for those who aren't listening, Annie Gunn's is kind of a top restaurant in St. Louis. So this is a big restaurant that he's doing, and you guys are. And you guys had with Oak, you guys were going, I mean, that lasted a while. You guys were traveling a lot. I'm talking to Greg, and that was kind of going on for a while. Yeah.
Oaks was, so we moved back to St. Louis on Isla's first birthday weekend. So she's a baby. Weeks later, I get pregnant. And now I think it's all very different, but at our 20-week anatomy ultrasound, where we go in thinking we're finding out if it's a girl or a boy, just naively trusting that his anatomy is perfect and he's going to be totally fine. That's when we find out he has a very significant, rare, crazy heart defect. And so that really introduced us to this world of congenital heart defects and everything that goes along with it. So 4.5 months of kind of wrapping our brains around what is this gonna be like, his life, our life, everything. And he lived for about 1.5 years. And so I'm jumping back and forth. When we met the Hinkles, he had passed. The Hinkles had also just lost a son due to a heart defect, Oliver. And when you, probably like any major life event that's unique or rare, maybe, you meet someone else who's walked that path and you're just sort of bonded. Just, it doesn't take much. You're like, you just click. And that's how it was with the Hinkles. And so just on a personal level, we start to get to know them. And I think when Greg learned Mark was managing Annie Guns, he like lit up and was like, oh my God, you're my guy. And truly within a couple months of their friendship, they were meeting on a weekly basis, writing this business plan. Jen and I were, toting around little kids, and we would run into each other and kind of roll our eyes. We're like, our husbands, they're crazy. What do they think they're doing? But really soon, those two guys sat us down and we're like, we are serious. We really want to do this. Of course, we need your blessing. And now it's been, 7 or 8 years. We now have 5 businesses in the umbrella of Olive and Oak, and it's gangbusters. It's crazy successful, and I still can't believe that we're in this world of restaurants and hospitality, and it works. So it's great, but it was not in my plan.
Well, there's a few things that you went through the story, but also Olive and Oak is very unique because of your son.
Yes.
Oak, and then his son, Oliver, right?
Yeah.
So you took the names together, and that's how you came up with the restaurant.
Yes.
And a portion of those proceeds still help out the foundations, right?
There are small like fundraisers that we'll do within the restaurant. It's not really a portion of proceeds, but we'll do, drink specials that go back to the foundations, or certain nights where we're doing fundraising in the spaces, which is really, it's super unique. It's a huge gift to both of our organizations. It's created this platform where we can, talk to our diners and our restaurants and our staff, and just it's given us this opportunity to create some awareness for both of the foundations, but also just, it's been such a unique opportunity to just talk about philanthropy and giving back and community and taking care of the people around you. I mean, there's just at the very base level, there's so many great, messages and opportunities that come from those restaurants.
Awesome. So there's several ways I want to go on this, but we'll start with the simple one. How about this? There's 5 restaurants now, or 5 entities underneath this. So let's go through each one of those, because Olive and Oak gets going. That's becoming very, very successful at the time that number 2 is getting ready to go. I know that number 1 has got a 6-week or 8-week waiting list just to even be able to get in the door.
Yeah.
And then I know this is something that had you personally involved. So what happens?
So we open Olive and Oak, and we get friends and family to invest. We take out some loans, but we're just trying to patch it together, make it work. We open without a sign on the front door, just hoping, people are going to show up and buy something. It was crazy busy. We were slammed for months. And people were like, this is going to be short-lived. It'll slow down. And for years, we've been packed. So we opened Olive and Oak, and I think the first location we could seat 60 people. Pretty small for a restaurant. And then within a couple months of being open, our landlord tells us the bookstore next door is closing their doors. That space is now available. We're going to give you first dibs. Do you want it? And we're all we had just barely started to like sleep normal hours and feel like we were back to ourselves after like getting everything up and going. And we're like, yeah, we're going to sign this lease and we're going to take on the second space, which is called Clover and the Bee. It's a coffee lunch spot. And then on the weekend nights, it's a wine bar that we call Clover. So real creative use of that space.
And that was a little inspired by you, right? You kind of wanted to keep the book name with the bookstore there and kind of keep kind of that feel from what I understood, right? Isn't that what I heard?
Yeah. Clover and the Bee comes from, I don't have the quote in front of me, but it is about, it's a quote that has to do with kind of hope and continuing, being strong was kind of the bottom line of that quote, and the Clover and the Bee name. And Olive and Oak the original interior was real dark woods and navy. And, we were only open at night. It was real moody and candle lit. And then Clover and the Bees, bright lights. And we've got flower murals on the wall. And I think as we were opening it with the Hinkles, a lot of the conversation was like the Olive and Oak is kind of a nod to the boys and they have 2 girls. So do we. Clover and the Bee was definitely more a nod to the girls and more feminine and light. And if you go, like I was in there today, it's full of women in there having salads and lunch and getting a coffee. And yeah, it's a really great space.
Yeah, it's like cafe feels how I always feel about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
then jump ahead down, probably about a block down the street, was this old business that had been there for years, like 50 years, auto beauty specialist, a car, like a auto body shop. Yeah. Huge building, 20,000 square feet.
Great location too. Not just the building, the location. It was probably the best location in that area.
Yes, on Lockwood, in the heart of downtown. This just huge building that has just been untouched for decades. And Auto Beauty, it's announced they're leaving Webster. And we were, Greg was going into City Hall for these like City Hall meetings, getting approval to open a Clover and the Bee, And Auto Beauty Specialist was in there talking about, are they leaving, are they staying? So Greg, in his like personable way, becomes friends with the owner at Auto Beauty and casually is like, if you want to sell your building and sell it to a local guy who's entrepreneurial like you, like, here's my card. So Auto Beauty ends up leaving. Greg gets this call. And so anyway, we worked out a deal and bought Auto Beauty Specialist building, and then hired John O'Brien, who's a designer in Kansas City. He came down, helped us kind of concept out what it's going to look like. And at first we thought we're going to open a third concept. But through a lot of conversations decided we're just going to move O&O down the street. We're going to move Olive and Oak into this space, but there was plenty of space. So we have currently Olive and Oak faces Lockwood, kind of a long, narrow space. But we have not doubled, but it's much bigger than that original space. Behind it is Perennial on Lockwood, which is a brew pub. And then behind that space is a really big event space where we host everything from, business meetings, corporate lunches, to weddings, receptions, rehearsals. I mean, you name it.
Whatever people want.
Whatever you want. Yeah. And we can seat about 300 people in that space. So it's a really spacious, it's modern, it's got all this like cool exposed, the structure of that original building. So it's architecturally, it's really cool. And then, we're kind of leaning on Jesse Mendica, our head chef, to create menus for events. So, if you're having an event there, Jesse's not back there cooking for you exactly, but she's going to curate your menu. And so it's just like a win all the way around. So that's how we kind of ended up with the 5 businesses under the one big umbrella. And I guess the one thing I missed was when we moved Olive and Oak down the street, that original Olive and Oak, then got rebranded, and it's now called O&O Pizza, which is, we make amazing pizza, but we also it's an Italian restaurant. So lots of handmade pastas, and it's phenomenal. It's great pizza. It's great pasta.
Is there a type of pizza? I mean, the pizza people listening are going to say, well, is it New York? Is it Chicago? Is it St. Louis?
It's the thin, crunchy, yummy pizza.
Sounds good.
Yeah. It's
Someone from St. Louis says that sounds good.
Right. And yeah, I mean, but my family loves it. If we are going to go out to eat, that is Greg's go-to. We can get in and out real quick with the kids, get pizza. We've got the most amazing T-Rabs on the menu. You have to come just for those. But we've got great craft cocktails. I mean, all of it. It's been a success. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Are the T-Rabs like handmade?
Oh yeah.
Are they big? Are they small? Are they medium?
I'd say they're like an average T-Rab size.
Right.
The breading and the fry on it, it's got like a nice dark color, and it's got a real good crunch to it.
It feels Italian.
And the filling, it's all
right.
I think it's just.
We'll go down there sometime. We'll call you and we'll get Greg and we'll grab a lunch or something.
Yeah.
So
yeah. It's all good.
We do a live podcast on there. We could record and take a look at the different restaurants. We'll do some tasting and do some. We could maybe interview some of the chefs.
Yeah.
Talk to a little bit about them and let them show. I mean, their specialty back there, how they love, because that's always interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
I find it interesting.
Yeah.
I find it very, very interesting.
Yeah.
I love cooking shows.
Personalities. Yeah.
Yeah. People like behind the scenes stuff.
Artists are always quirky, though. That's the beauty of it.
What is?
Artist. And, cook is an artist. I mean, they really are. I mean, you look at a cake and tell me that's not art.
Yeah.
I mean, like you look at food. I watch all these baking shows and I'm like, gosh, these people are, and they are quirky, but they're so good.
Yeah.
And it looks so good.
Yeah.
Oh.
I would say everyone in our back of house is like passionate. They could talk your ear off about a new knife they got, or their latest tool, or a new recipe, or
That's awesome.
yeah, it's great.
That's really, really cool. So now I want to get into your foundation, because that also will really launch the foundation. So Oak, as you were talking about, passes away, and both you and the Hinkles. Now, to clarify, you both have foundations, because that kind of gets confusing sometimes. We've talked about in the past. So, but you guys, what is the exact name of your foundation?
So we started Mighty Oaks Heart Foundation, and we started the organization when Oaks was alive. The story about the foundation is, like I mentioned, we knew while I was pregnant he was going to be born with this heart defect. Thought we were preparing or wrapping our brains around it, which I just don't think in hindsight you really can get ready for anything like that. So he's born, he's in the hospital, multiple open heart surgeries, endless trips to the cath lab, just every little thing that maybe they said this could go wrong, it seems like went wrong. But there were so many just blessings that really came from his life. So even on his hardest day in the hospital, it was really humbling, really eye-opening to be at Children's Hospital for a year and a half. You just see a lot of heartache, and you see families like ours, good people, normal people, people making really good choices in life and living good lives, and just bad things happen. Mm-hmm. And so what was so eye-opening to me was befriending other families in the Heart Center and meeting people from all over the Midwest, all over the U.S., who had come to Children's for care. And, we lived like 10 minutes from the hospital. Like I've said, Greg owns his own company. We've got a house, we've got 2 cars, we've got money, we've got few worries financially. And so I'm meeting these families who, one mom I'm still dear friends with is here from Michigan. Her kid is on life-saving, life support for weeks and weeks. Dad is back in Michigan because he has to work because they need insurance and they need to pay their mortgage and all the things. And so she's here alone by his bedside, like praying and bartering with God and begging and, just like surviving, hanging on, really. And as a parent, when your kid is critically ill, you just sort of, I can only speak for myself. At that time, I was like, it's okay if we lose everything. It's okay if we declare bankruptcy. It's okay. I don't care. I just need to be here with my kid. Like, your child is your number one priority. It was mine. I was like, oh, it's all just stuff. It's okay. But for me, the big eye-opening piece was meeting these other families, hearing their stories, hearing what was stressing them beyond their sick kid. And so, in hindsight, it's like God, the world, the universe, everything I can see now just seemed to kind of happen in this like amazingly perfect way. So Oaks was, because of his heart defect, he was listed for a double lung transplant. And someone from the hospital, kind of on the finance end, dug into our insurance, comes up to his room one day and was like, Miss Ortyl, you have tremendous insurance. You're just going to pay a fraction for this transplant. Your insurance company is going to pay millions for this lung transplant. But just in case they drop you or you don't have, like your anti-rejection meds aren't covered, whatever, you should do a little fundraiser and have this emergency fund. So Greg hears all this and he's like, that is a hard pass. We're not going to our friends and family and asking for anything. We're good. He's like the strong man dad. And he's like, no. And my eyeballs are open and I'm like, oh my gosh, what's about to happen to our family? I'm thinking we're going to lose all the things. We're going to lose everything and whatever. We mentioned this to John Moriarty, a mutual friend, and his wife, and they circle back to us a couple days later. And Ellen's like, I'm going to do a golf tournament for you guys, and I'm going to raise your $30,000. So in like 3 months, she plans this event, and it's like just an afternoon golf outing and a little dinner reception and a silent auction. And she's like, just show up. We just want you to come. You don't have to plan anything. We show up and our friends and family raise $100,000 in this one night.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty good. So Greg and I both are, emotional, and we're so touched and humbled and, also just like terrified. What does it mean when all your friends do this? Like, it's just like this reality check, like, man, shit's bad. Like, this is scary. And anyway, so I'm in the hospital and I'm meeting these parents, these other families, and I'm talking to a mom and she's like, I don't know how I'm gonna, she was from Missouri, like Columbia. And she's like this young mom, single mom. And she was telling me how she didn't know how she would, she couldn't afford gas to go home over the weekend and work a shift so that she could then afford the rent to keep the apartment to bring the kid home to eventually. And it's like this domino effect and all this financial stress.
Oh, yeah.
No right choices.
It's just a mess.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking I have $100,000 sitting in the bank. So I go down to the ATM at Children's. I withdraw couple $100. I wrap it in a paper towel. I hand it to my nurse and said, go give it to this mom. Don't tell her it came from me. I don't want things to be weird, but she needs it more than I do. And I keep doing this over the course of a couple weeks. And it made me feel really good. It's filling my heart. Even on these terrible days, I'm like, I can help someone else. I can do a little good. And Greg is like cheering me on. He's like, yeah, give it away. Cause we're not going to need $100,000. And then, a social worker comes to me and she's like, are you the lady handing out cash? Because you got to stop doing this. This is a little crazy. So we sit down with some friends. I think John's included, and we decide, okay, we're going to establish a 501c3 nonprofit. We're going to file paperwork. We're going to, write a mission statement, a vision statement. We need a board. So Oaks is in the hospital. Greg's working a full-time job, and we're like side hustling this nonprofit. In hindsight, we were crazy. I don't know what we were thinking, but I think we were just so moved by the entire situation, and we were trying to figure out a lot of things felt really bad. This felt really good. And it just like organically kind of like took off. And so we had an application and families would apply. And at a certain point too, we had this series of just devastating conversations in the hospital where we knew, okay, Oaks is not going to make it. He's not going to live, which I think also like fueled, we got to give this money away. This money that was earmarked for him, we've got to give it to other families and help them. And everything about it just felt like magical and so impactful. And then when Oaks died, for me, it was like therapy to be able to connect. These parents would reach out. I could kind of talk to them. I could say Oak's name. I could talk about him, his journey, and then turn around and pay 3 months of their mortgage. So they weren't going into foreclosure and their life wasn't falling apart. I mean, it was just like this amazing
absolutely
gift.
I look at it as you have this thing that keeps his spirit and his remembrance out there. Yeah. And he was a fighter. So, the fact that this is still going on just shows that apple didn't fall far from the tree.
Yeah. So. I mean, that was all, he would be 13. So it's been, I think in the beginning, I thought, oh, this feels really good. I'll do this for a couple years. And then just kind of, our events got bigger and we were raising more money and impacting more families. And a couple years into it, I went to my board and was like, I'm exhausted at this point. I guess a year, 2 years after let me think about it. He was a year and a half when he passed. We waited a year and got pregnant. So then we had Esme. So Isla and Esme, there's 5 years between them. But, I'm like working on grants and helping families and planning fundraisers while she's napping and she's going to preschool. And anyway, at one point I kind of went to the board and was like, I'm exhausted. I can't keep doing this. Is not, I either need help, I need to hire some people, or we just need to like spend down our money and close it up. And they all kind of looked at me and they were like, you're the boss. What do you want to do? And I think, Greg was a part of all those conversations. And I think we both, it was one of those like marital things where we're talking about it for months. What if this and maybe that, and kind of mulling it over and, listening to our hearts. And at the end, it was kind of like, well, if we can scale this up, why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we just bring on a team and I think, going back to the very beginning where I was able to kind of trust him and lean on him. I think we've done the same thing with Mighty Oaks, where it's been very collaborative, and there are some things that I'm like, no, it has to be like this. And there are, times where he steps back and other times where he steps up and he's like, oh, it has to go like this. So.
And now you got a team to help run it.
Now
so there's not as much. Yeah, I was going to say, I've heard about them. So
sorry, go ahead, finish.
No, I was just going to say, Greg will mention them every now and then and it's fun because I love the excitement every time it comes up, just like with you.
Yeah.
There's an excitement, and anytime you guys see a heart, and I do the same thing now. Anytime I see a heart, I think of your foundation because that's been ingrained in me now for so long.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's amazing. I mean, I think, and for the most part, Greg's kind of stepped back. He's on the board, but at this point, he's like, you guys run it, and he'll come to the events and he talks and he does.
He'll help.
He definitely helps.
Have you ever heard of the Lindbloms? Josh Lindblom, Ariel Lindblom? Their third daughter was born with a heart defect, and they lived in Indiana. He was a MLB player, played in the big leagues, and I know they started something. I didn't know how small the community is, if you knew names or,
Yeah.
but they're still pretty active in it.
So I know I've had several friends who have been blessed by the foundation. And it was funny because I didn't even know it at the time.
Really? I don't think I knew that.
And the way I found out was when you guys did your first run.
Oh,
That
yeah.
run.
Yeah.
I seen some, I'm like, why are you guys here? And they're like, how do you do that? And I'm like, I've known Greg forever. He hits me up for sports memorabilia for all the fundraisers. I go around, grabbing stuff of Albert's or whatever around church and get it for him. And I don't usually use my contacts, but it was always easy when it's like, it's not for me, it's for this awesome. And I give them a little bit of story. I never had a player ever say, no, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
They would love it. So I would do that. And, but it was so funny. But I wound up finding more and more people who had been blessed by the foundation who you guys had helped. And,
Is that, so you guys started golf tournament.
Yeah.
Sounds like you have maybe some other things that you guys do, or is it pretty?
Yeah, we've got, so we do a golf tournament here in St. Louis, which is coming up on September 21st at the Bogey Club. Super fun event. We've only been doing that for a couple years. And then Greg's company does a second golf tournament that's down in Fort Lauderdale every year. And then we do some small things here and there, but then we also, around Oak's birthday, which is March 10th, we usually have like a big gala kind of event. Although during COVID.
Yeah, that got weird for a lot of places. So everybody's kind of getting them back now.
Yeah. So we took a couple years off from that. And then last year we did an event at our Olive and Oak event space, but kind of got away from like the gala format and did something much more casual with food stations, people moving around, and a smaller scale. Like pre-COVID, we would do a big event at the Ritz with like 700 people. And it was just, for me personally, like exhausting. And
yeah, that's a lot of
so like planning a wedding every year.
Every year. It's a lot. And then it's like, it's like you get married and you got to run through the room and talk to the people and thank people. I mean, it's just like, so anyway, last year's event was smaller and more intimate, which I think felt right post-COVID. And so, yeah, we have a variety of in-person events. And then we're always doing like a little online virtual fundraiser, little things here and there.
It's awesome.
And so
yeah.
We'll put a link on the episode. So anybody wants to either apply, because there's you go to their website, you can go apply. Or if you want to get involved and help donate or get involved with one of the fundraisers, or just contact them and see how you can get involved. Maybe, I always tell people it's not always about money. Sometimes, like I've seen you guys do stuff like just bringing little gifts down to the Children's Hospital to give to the kids or to the parents, even to the nurses.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they don't understand how appreciated they are, but they make a big difference.
Yeah.
Their families are hurting, right? Anytime you're dealing with kids, there's a lot usually of emotions running high. I mean, as you just said, I would give it all up for my kid to be there. And that's how most, but the truth is mortgages still happen.
Yeah.
Life still happens. The repairs don't always go the way you want them to.
Yeah.
So, those things, and so having good nurses that are around and for them to know they're appreciated, I think goes a long way too.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, we try and spread the love. Take care of the nurses, take care of the families. There's always like an endless list of things that we can do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're always trying to find ways to help.
And heart defects are a lot more prevalent than people realize. Yeah,
the statistic for a congenital heart defect, so that would be a defect that you're born with, is 1 in 100, which is those odds are a little scary. Yeah. It's the number one birth defect in the world. And so they're out there.
But we don't talk about it a lot. I mean, I didn't really talk about it, and then you guys, and then shortly after you guys, I have another friend. They didn't actually need your foundation or insurance, took care of everything, but their son, who's now in high school, just had his last surgery. He's had to have a valve replaced every so many years. They have to go in and do surgery and replace a valve in his heart. And so he's had goat valves and pig valves, and but I think it's amazing that we can take an animal part and put inside a human, and this kid, you wouldn't. when I look, and they're now in New Mexico, but when I watch pictures and stuff through the social media, living a normal life, just normal everyday kid having a lot of fun, doing all things normal, but every so many years has to, and I think he just got his final vow that he gets to keep for the rest. Now his body is for that part fully developed now, or there.
I have a question. Maybe this is a dumb question, but is it the funds and everything you mentioned, mortgages, helping out food, gas, and everything? Is that a majority of where the funds are, or is there anything post, maybe post hospital or post anything that you guys deal with?
That's a great question. So really, for the last 12, 13 years, our focus really has been supporting families who have children with heart defects in unique and specific ways. So your family might need help with a mortgage. Your family might need help with travel expenses or medical equipment. So there's not like we're just giving everyone $500. We're really talking to the families and digging in. We rely heavily on their social workers to identify what is it that's creating the most stress in your life. And then we want to help.
And that's part of the application process.
That's part of the application.
Okay, so it's very individualized.
It's very individualized, and we've got a team of the most amazing volunteers who go through quite a bit of training, and they donate their time to do exactly that. They're our grant officers, and they talk to the families, they talk to the social workers, and they physically help us pay the bills, and they're on hold with Ameren paying a bill, or getting in touch with a bank to pay a mortgage, or whatever it is.
That's cool.
So that is mostly where our funds go, is just to keep families together is really what our mission is. And I will say, like, just personally, when we knew that he wasn't going to leave the hospital, we had this big meeting at Children's, and it was a big conference room and full of doctors and nurses, and we were kind of talking about, we're out of options. We're out of these like surgical options. There's very little we can do. We're talking about transitioning into hospice care, and what does that look like? And it was kind of like at a certain point, people's mouths were moving, and it was like the Charlie Brown, I just couldn't accept the fact that, like, you never, I remember saying, like, I'm never going to tell you I'm ready to give up. Like, I'm just, no, there's no way in the world. Like, let's just keep going and fight as hard as we can. But there was definitely signs from Oaks that he had fought his fight. Like, it was time. But there was this sweet, sweet doctor in the room, and he had said, we had moved from like the hard topic into why we all love Oaks and why is he so great and so amazing and he's so strong. And he got this name, Mighty Oaks, and the staff would call him, how's Mighty Oaks today? Like, this was really his nickname. And one of the doctors was like, yeah, I'll tell you why he's so strong. It's because you and Greg show up every single day, and you're in here giving him every reason to fight. You've like showered him with love. If he's learned anything in this short little life, it's like what it feels like to be loved so deeply. And that was what I left that meeting with. It was like,
so true.
God, okay, we're going to say goodbye to this sweet kid, but he knows I love him. So what, as a parent, like, what else can you do, or what else do you want for your kid? Anyway, so that conversation and that message is truly what's like driven our mission. So when a family comes to us and a social worker is like, yeah, this family is in a bind, they need so much help, our vision, our mission is to go figure out what does that family really need, so that mom and dad can show up in the hospital and give that kid every reason to fight. And so most of the time we're paying bills. There are plenty of times where families come back to us, like the story you told, where a kid is 7 years old, they're 12 years old, they're 16, and they're like, our kids, we're going back to the hospital. There's another surgery. So maybe it's not an infant, but we continue to support families beyond that infancy stage. And then there's a dozen little things that we do throughout the year where, we donate books to the hospitals that, like, board books that the the physical therapist use to help with the kids, just build up muscle strength and hold a book and turn a page, little things. We donate boppies and nursing bras to moms who are nursing because there's so much science behind a mom nursing versus bottle fed and the bonding that happens and all of that. There's a camp that Children's puts on here in town, Camp Rhythm. It's free for kids with heart defects that are most of these kids are taking medication daily and couldn't go to a maybe normal, typical summer camp. They can go to Camp Rhythm for free. We support that. There's so many little things that we're doing for families beyond.
Sounds like big things.
Big
to
things.
me.
They're all big things. I was thinking the exact same things. And
Thanks. Yeah.
they may seem little to you, but they're big for every one of those families, for every one of those kids. That's, and just knowing people care. I think sometimes that makes a big difference too, is that, you're not in the fight alone, that people care.
Yeah.
And as you said, 1 out of 100, right?
Yeah,
You said,
100.
Have heart defects. So chances are people listening to this, there's probably somebody in their circle that either, had it and they may not even know.
Yeah.
So I think it's great that we're bringing this discussion out a little bit, because
Yes.
we need to have these discussions more, and people need to know that they're not, just because their kid has it doesn't make them a freak.
No.
Doesn't mean that they're weird.
No.
Doesn't mean they did anything wrong.
No, there is no known cause. It's not like, oh, if your kid has a heart defect, we know you've done this. We don't know that science. We don't know that. But
I don't think there is a science to it. I think it's just one of those things where, sometimes things happen, and God has purpose in all of it. And I think from Oak's legacy continues to live through his foundation and through his parents, and I know that he knew he was loved.
Yes.
Talked to Greg many a times when all that was going on, and so absolutely, and I think that's important. That's what we want all of our kids to know. When my dad passed a couple years ago, I thought it was really cool that the week before he passed, he'd spent time with every one of his kids and every one of his grandkids. Just had worked out where he'd gone out to Kansas City, got to see my sister, have a little alone time with her, had some time with each of the grandkids. He had over the last week and a half, a bunch of my kids had gone over and spent a couple nights. He took 2 at a time, so he'd had some time with each one of them.
Yeah.
Got to spend time with my other sister. It was just like,
yeah.
You never want anybody to leave.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, obviously I mourned my dad, and that was terrible. It was so unexpected, but looking back, I was like, I'm so grateful that we each had some time to spend time alone with them, and all the kids did. And what a great way to go out if you're going to go out, so that they all know that you love them.
Yeah.
So
that's amazing.
Yeah. Well, anything else you want to share about Mighty Oaks or the restaurants or
I don't think
your Ortyls? All right.
No, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about Oaks, to talk about Mighty Oaks Heart Foundation, and tell my story, his story, and like you said, just kind of create some awareness.
Absolutely. Well, I enjoyed it. I've known bits and pieces, but I always enjoy hearing these stories because they come together, because I get to walk through them sometimes. But then, I heard Greg's side. I didn't hear some of the stuff from your side, so that was great to hear, because I remember all the restaurants. Josh, what do you think about this? Or I'm going full speed. And but I love it. I love it. I love your husband. He's a great guy.
Well, I definitely think I have said many times, I think Greg Oaks, talking about Oaks being mighty, he got a lot of his strength and his determination from his dad. Just a go-getter. So that little apple didn't fall far from the tree.
Nope.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
I've been biting my tongue, but I'm just going to say it. In Revelation, okay, when everything's done, God separates his people from not his people. He says, good job, good and faithful servant. When I was sick, you visited me in the hospital. When I was in prison, you visited me in prison. So I'm just thinking about God saying good, I can't imagine having you. I think are going to have a special blessing from God because of what you had to go through. On earth.
Well, I do feel. Thank you. That's nice to think about. I do feel like I'm blessed in this life. I feel like there's. I don't know.
Well, you took a tragedy though too, and not only did you go through that, but then you didn't turn it into. I always tell people, when a guy loses a job, there's one of two reactions he typically can have, and one of them is to get into the fetal position and kind of go into this state of mind where it's almost like shock and, just almost depression. Or the other side is this is opportunity. I just got to get out there and get the next job. And, there's already something already lined up. I just got to get to it and make it happen. And I think of that as when tragedy happens, we can get depressed and then there's natural reaction. You're going to go through the grieving process. Yeah. There's no doubt about that. But you don't have to stay caught in it for the rest of your life. You can use that as a spring of hope. And for you guys, that was the foundation. That was, helping out so many different people, turning tragedy into hope in a different way.
Yeah.
And
no, I agree. And but I will say for anyone that's listening, that's thinking, I can't start a restaurant, or maybe I don't have the wherewithal to do the full foundation. I think there's small things that anyone can do who's grieving or hurting. I tell families that we help that end up losing a child. It is always my advice to do something for someone else, because when you're doing that, you can step away from your own pain. Your heart might be aching for whatever reason in life. But if you are going to shift your focus away from your pain and your hurt to help someone else, it's just a great way to process your own grief and get out of your own head. And I just think, you could go find any kind of organization. Every nonprofit in St. Louis and probably across the country is looking for volunteers. They're looking for someone to help them do something. And it could be the smallest. Like I was saying, I think these are little things. And you guys are saying, no, those are big things. I think there are plenty of people out there who are like, oh, I can't make a difference. These are just like small things. But sometimes it's the smallest gestures that are going to light up someone else's life. So I just think, it might not be a restaurant, it might not be a foundation, but there's so many opportunities to
serve,
do good, to serve.
You talked about, I love it. I love serving hearts. I think those are, when you serve people, it humbles you, and there's a lot that happens in there. Yeah. So
well, thank you for this opportunity. This was really cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Agree.
Yeah.
Well, hey, if you've been listening, we appreciate it, and don't forget to
like, subscribe, comment, share,
and check out Mighty
Oaks
Heart Foundation.
Yeah.
I always say Mighty Oaks, and then she was like, Heart. I got to remember Heart, because there's actually a Mighty Oaks Foundation. When I looked, and it's like a veteran one, but Mighty Oaks.
And they're a great organization. We've talked to them.
But that's not what we're highlighting. That's not
what we're here.
We're highlighting
Mighty Oaks
Heart Foundation.
Yep. Yeah. So make sure we get it right. But also it'll be in the notes, and they can easily just click on the links and get to everything if you want to jump in and serve in a way at the foundation. Yeah, she just said they're always looking for volunteers, so reach out, do it, and if not there, your local church, you can talk to. I'm sure your church has ministry to mothers and mothers with newborns. Yeah, I know my wife has a gift of trying to organize food and delivery for those. Everybody can use different gifts, and sometimes it's serving, sometimes it's organizing those that serve. But get out and serve; it'll help. I think that was one of the keys I learned of today. So, all right, with that, we'll catch you next episode. Take care.
Thank you.
your